wellness and high vibrations family. This is Sis We Need to Talk. You are here. Today is what, March 4th? March 4th, 2019. I'm like, we're now almost through the first quarter of the year. I can't even believe that. But we are here for another episode of Sis We Need to Talk. And I am your host, Tisha Hillman. And this is a show that is dedicated to having a conversation with primarily black women about the issues that we deal with, the things that we want, and when those things manifest, what they actually look like in the now or in the reality. And really coming to grips with whether or not the things that we say we want are actually the things we want once they manifest. And so I'm grateful to everyone who has liked, shared, commented on any things within the show that have been said within the last, I guess, 5 months that I've been doing the show. I hope that as we go forward, more people will find the information that is shared in the conversations that we have to be not only enlightening, but also empowering. So with that being said, today we're going to talk about how we are all actors on a world stage. But before we get into that, you guys always know, if you've ever tuned into the show, that I always go first to my 3Ts, or Tisha's Trending Topics. And so if you guys have been paying attention to what's going on in the news, you know, as you guys will probably know, from a geopolitical place, it's a very precarious place that we find ourselves, particularly in the United States. But then, of course, as a ripple effect, the effects are felt throughout the rest of the world as well because of the United States currency. But, you know, here we are. We are in a very, very interesting place because if you guys recall last week, Michael Cohen, who is this current president's longtime attorney and fixer, so basically he was his do-boy. Whatever, you know, your boy wanted, he made sure that he made it happen. So Michael Cohen, I think about it like this, y'all. Like, Michael Cohen is effectively what Suge Knight was for Death Row Music or Death Row Records, right? Michael Cohen is Suge Knight for white people in politics. But he grew a conscience and he said, okay, you know, all this street code stuff, you know, take one for the team. I'm not about that life. I got kids. I got a family. You know, I'm not about that. I'm not really about that life. And so here we are. And so, you know, Michael Cohen wrapped up his testimony. And, you know, if you guys can recall, or if you've heard about it over the weekend, so basically there's supposed to be a sealed federal indictment in the federal court of D.C. Now, apparently, it doesn't say, you know, who's being indicted, for what, because it's a sealed indictment. And, you know, obviously this week, I think, is the week that Robert Mueller, who's the special prosecutor for the Trump investigation, he's supposed to release his report. And there's a lot of speculation about what that's going to look like. But, you know, here's the thing that I find intriguing. And I do another show on the first Friday of every month where I'm the co-host of a show called The Marketing Pulpit. And I do the show with the host, Robert Gatewood. And it's over at Radio 1. And so you guys can catch me there every first Friday of the month on The Marketing Pulpit. But anyway, on that show on Friday, I was talking about we are really having a debate. And when I say we, I guess, well, no, actually, it really is we. It is the country is having a debate about whether or not the sitting president, by virtue of being the sitting president, can do and engage in a criminal enterprise, and whether we're okay with that. Like in real life. I'm so, like, sometimes I sit back and I'm just like, I'm baffled. Because it's like, in real life, y'all, this is the conversation that we're having as Americans and that we are allowing our elected officials to have. So are you really telling the United States people that a president who, when he started his campaign, he said, I could shoot someone in the middle of Times Square and not lose votes? Oh, how true we found that to be. But I find that to be absolutely fascinating because look at all of the things that we know, right? We know about, there's fine people on both sides of the neo-Nazi debate. We know that he called, countries in Africa and the Caribbean shithole countries. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can say that. But anyway, it's done. So, we know that he said that. We know that the Access Hollywood tape, right? Grab him by the, whatever, right? We know these things. We know that when he was at this, the law enforcement thing that he did a few years ago, when he told a room full of law enforcement officers to not be so gentle when arresting folks. But when his people are arrested, now everybody's corrupt, right? Now the system is corrupt when it's your people. But when it's our people on the receiving end of your oppression, right? Here where I'm going with this. When it's our people on the receiving end of your oppression, they need to be even rougher. But when it's your people who are gently being handcuffed, because remember, a lot of the things that happen in our community and just the U.S. at large is it doesn't even have to be at this point, and this is where I get upset with the Me Too movement. It doesn't even have to be based on actual evidence. It's the belief, right? It's a different standard. It's the belief that something happened, or this one person said you did X, and even though there's no evidence to support that proposition, we're going to end your life for all intents and purposes, right? But when it's the other end, we're actually saying, but wait, no, everybody else is corrupt. My circle's fine. So I see that to be a microcosm of what's going on in the macro, right? So basically, if we fine tune this thing, I believe that if we look at what's happening right now in DC, 10 miles from here, right? What's happening is just a small glimpse, a snapshot, if you will, of what's happening in the US and the world at large. People are trying to figure out who they are. And it's a tough proposition to come up with, because once you figure out who you are, then you got to decide, do I like that? And I think when Michael Cohen realized this is who he had become, he didn't want to be that person anymore. And so what I saw when I saw the testimony was a man who was actually contrite, because I think he had a come to Jesus meeting, if you will, right? I think he really realized, I've gotten myself into some mess here by allying with the wrong people. And this is what I keep saying to my sisters. When you are allying with the wrong folks, with the same conclusion that Michael Cohen came to when he said, if you continue to blindly follow this man, I guarantee you that you are going to be in the same place that I am. So we cannot have this blind allegiance to something because it's benefiting us in the now, but yet it's hurting a whole bunch of other people. Because guess what, folks? We're not in this thing alone. There are other people. And so it's not just about your own experience, but it's about the audience as well. And so this is why I wanted to talk about us being actors on a world stage, because we are. And so, I hope that something with that, about that resonates with you guys, because we're all at a place where we're being forced to look at who we are and to make a decision about who we are. And if we don't like that, who are we going to be? Because it's us that has the ability to change who we are. No one else can change you. You have to change you. But first, you got to figure out who you are. But anyway, on with the Michael Cohen thing. So if you guys can also remember this week, Aisha Presley, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, and Rashida Tlaib the photo of them went viral. And it went viral because just I guess the looks on their faces, right? So people were saying, oh, the country's in great hands, blah, 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 blah. And here's the thing. I'm not at all saying that that's not accurate. But I do find it interesting, the narratives, right, that the scripts, if you will, that we're asked to read from. The scripts that the news folks and everybody else is asked to read from. I try to pay attention to those things because they matter. But Because I'm just like, in the midst of what could be one of the most politically explosive things that we have seen, at least in my lifetime, probably in most of our lifetimes, um, we are being asked to focus on the physical expression. Follow me. The expression of power versus power itself. This is what I mean, folks. We get so caught up, particularly as black folks, because Lord knows we always fall for the goddamn. I'm sorry. We always fall for the. I have to catch myself, y'all. We always fall for the shiny object. We always fall for the shiny object because we don't recognize symbolism. And so it's like, what we're seeing is a photograph, and we are placing value on the expression of power, because what we are looking at is, oh, the power, the future of the country is in good hands because of the expression on their faces. And that makes me concerned, because I'm like, well, what do we actually consider to be power? Do we consider power the symbolism and the expression of power, or the physical manifestation in action of power? Because I think that's where we get caught, right? We're looking at the symbol and the expression and not looking at the actual kinetic energy that moves the wheel. We get stuck here and we never move the wheel. And so, folks, I challenge you to not look at the expressions on the faces, because those are just photographs, but to look at where power actually derives, what power actually looks like when it moves something to act, right, in this physical plane. Because again, we're talking the global political structure. The global political structure. But we are being asked to look at the expression of a photograph on people's faces. You know what I mean? Of what was captured in that 1 millisecond, instead of what's been happening all around us. Pay attention to what's happening around you and not get caught up on a snapshot. And that brings me to my third point, or my third trending topic, if you will. So if you guys remember, I think it was last year, kid in Sacramento was shot. I would say executed by the police, Stephon Clark. And you guys remember his brother kept getting himself into all this media stuff because he was on some other stuff, like, on the news and whatever. But if you guys remember, when Stephon Clark was executed, he was running in his grandmother's backyard. They said that he was a suspect in a vandalism case. Still don't know if that's accurate, but even if it were, you don't shoot someone for stealing property, or allegedly attempting to steal property, right? That is not a lawful reason to take someone's life, because they're attempting to break into an unoccupied vehicle, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing was, they said that he had a tire iron. My understanding, they said he had a tire iron, and then he had a cell phone, and then he had a gun. So basically, they don't know what the hell he had, if he had anything at all. But what we do know is Stephon Clark is no longer here. His children no longer have a father. They're going to grow up without him. His mother no longer has a son. His father no longer has a son. His brother and his sisters no longer have a brother. All because law enforcement saw a black man, believed him to fit the description, because hell, when you're black, it comes with the territory, right? You're black. You fit the description. All, suspects are black. This is why the Me Too movement is dangerous. But the suspect is black. And so because of that, all we have to say is we feared for our lives. And if I can somehow convince the community at large, and by community at large, I mean white folks, um, that I feared for my life, and he's black, right? So they're going to understand that that makes sense. That's logical. He's black. I'm in fear of my life. Close, close case. That gives them carte blanche to rob the world of this man. Problem. But we know this happens, right? And this is why I do this show, because I say to my people, if we know what's happening in our country, because we've lived here, right? So we know that the president is going ape. We know people are lacking education, lacking jobs. Our communities are war torn, a lot of them. Um, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many things that plague our communities. And so this is where I challenge my own people. And I say, well, if you know that all of these things are happening to you, why would you do things to inflict punishment upon yourselves? Because if your numbers, right? Remember, we have been 12 to 13% of the population for as long as I can remember. Why is that? It's not because we're not having kids, right? And that's a whole nother show. It's not because we're not having kids. Some of us are not. And I would venture to say that those of us that, probably can do a little bit better by our kids, and I know that sounds judgmental, but kids require certain things. And what I am saying is that we can't say that there's a lack of education, a lack of parenting, and all these things, and not put the blame somewhere, right? Someone is raising and educating these children, and it's not always someone else's. It's not someone else's responsibility. It's yours as a parent. It's yours. So if your kids are messed up, whose fault is it? It's yours. Look in the mirror. It's yours. Now, do I believe that there's a community responsibility at large? Yes. But on a micro level, it's yours as a parent. So if your kids are effed up, it's your fault. Look in the mirror. And all I'm saying to my people is we can no longer be the victims in this story. We're not victims. The only power that anybody has over you is that which you give them, that which you concede. And power concedes nothing without a demand. So now that you've given people power over you, how do you get that back? You get that back by dealing with who you are. And this is why we talk about being actors on a world stage, because to my folks, I say, who are you? And if you don't like it, change it. If you don't want to be a victim, don't be a victim. Change it. Change the narrative. Change the damn narrative. That's what we got to do as people. Seriously. It's that simple. Change the narrative. You don't like what you're looking at? Look at something else, right? Change the channel in your mind. Change the channel. And because you got to remember, folks, it's all about what you give your attention to. And, there's this, I guess, is he considered a theoretical physicist? Schrodinger. I think it was Edwin Schrodinger. I think he was a theoretical physicist. You guys can look this up. But Schrodinger had this theory, and it's called Schrodinger's cat. And I learned about this on The Big Bang Theory because I love that show. But anyway, so this theory is about Schrodinger's cat. And so the whole thing about the cat is, okay, if you have this cat in a box, how do you know if the cat is dead or alive, right? You have to actually lift up the box and observe the cat to make a determination of whether the cat is dead or alive. But until you actually observe the thing, it could be either. It could be whatever you want it to be. And this is what I'm saying, folks. Until you give something your attention, it's whatever you want it to be. And so if you don't want something to have your attention that's going to negatively affect you, don't give it your attention. Just don't give it your attention. Actually rise above the thing that's trying to pull your attention down. And so as black women, I saw all these things, just to kind of circle back to Stephon Clark, because I saw these comments where my sisters, man, We're in these comment section talking about, oh, isn't this the dude that, once said that he doesn't like or doesn't date black women? Well, I have no concern. That's not the word, but I have no concern about him in life or death. Because why will I continue to fight for someone who doesn't fight for me? Hear this. I understand that argument, and I understand as women why we say that. But I also understand the selfishness of it. Because think about this. What we are saying is because this one black man that we don't know, right? Most of us don't know this man, that we don't know, because he once said in a snapshot, hear what I'm saying, in a snapshot in the timeline that was his life, he said, I don't date black women. It wasn't your ass. It wasn't you. You know what I mean? So it's not, we identify with these characters that are victims. We overly identify with victims, and thereby, in our own mind, we remain victims. And so when someone exhibits behavior that reminds us of why we were victimized, we want to victimize them, right? And what I'm saying to you, sisters, is that we can't do that. Because what's going to happen is you're going to produce an absurd result. And I guarantee you, you're not going to like the result and what it looks like in the physical. Because if you are a mother to a little black boy, do you actually want someone to have the ability to say, well, little Tyrone once said, when he was 15, he once said, I don't mess with black women. The internet's forever, right? And so do you want someone to take something that your baby said once, regardless of his ignorance and where he was at that place on the timeline of his life? Do we want someone to be able to judge whether he lives or dies and what his reputation should be based on that snapshot, that brief moment in time? I would venture to say no. No, it's the sum of the parts. We are the sum of the whole. And I'm saying this with such passion because I'm trying to get us to understand this. We are the sum of the whole of all of our parts. It's not just about you individually, sister. That is selfish and self-centered. And it makes you no better than your oppressor. Because think about it. What I started saying this is all about, if you look at what's happening with Donald Trump right now, it is a microcosm of what's going on a global scale. So to me, it is clear that there is an agenda to get black women to turn against our own people, because it doesn't help us. It helps people who don't want to help you. It helps your oppressor. It does. Look at it. If you think about it long enough, if you take yourself out of the equation for a second, you'll understand what I'm saying to you is true. Because think about it. If we don't realize that where all of us are, black, white, or otherwise in this country, are the effects, the side effects, if you will, of white supremacy and white domination in our country, because it should not be about domination of anyone. I promise you there's enough for everybody, but people don't want to share. And so we're selfish and we're self-centered and we want it all for ourselves. We want all the money. We want all the love. We want all the attention. We want all the victimization. We want all everything. We want everything. But what happens once you have it all? What then? What do you strive for once you have it all? And this is what I'm saying. Think about it. Once you have colonized every single thing, what is left for you to hope for? If you've put all of your stock in this, it's your legacy. And so what I'm saying to you, sisters, you never want your legacy to be that of oppression. You don't want to be on the wrong side of history on this thing. Because the people that are going to suffer are your babies. They're your children. They're my children. Those are the people that are going to suffer in this thing if we don't get it right. And so if 15 years from now, your now 5-year-old boy is telling you that some girl said that he raped her, I hope if you're supporting the Me Too movement, hook, line, and sinker, I hope you look your little boy in the face and you say, damn right. If she said it, you're guilty. Because that's what we're saying right now to these other people's sons, right? That's what we're saying to their sons. Think about how absurd that would be. No more than these same women who are on this post talking about Stephon Clark got what he deserved because he said he didn't date black women. Think about this. Did we ever say that to Meghan Markle? No, we celebrated her when oh this she married a prince and we stayed up for the royal. Think about it. Think about it. The same things that we're upset with this black man and we're crucifying him in his death. We celebrate a black woman for doing that same thing. How is that okay? Either you're gonna be okay with it or you're not, but you can't make that the line of demarcation. You can't say it's only good for me, but if you do it, it's wrong. Because it's the same thing that I just said about Donald Trump. Everything that he's doing, we're having a debate on whether or not it should be legal and constitutional and he should have the right to do it. And that's the same thing that we as black women are doing to our own men. That's the same thing that we're doing. Think about it. The same thing that we're doing. I should have the right to say, don't look at me. Oh, I feel harassed. I feel assaulted because you looked at me too long. That's what we're saying. So when some woman says to your little boy that same thing, keep that same energy. If that's the hill you're going to die on, keep that same energy when it's you and when it's your loved ones. Because I guarantee you, the people that you're judging for a brief snapshot in their life is somebody's loved one. But turn the tables on yourself and look at who you are, because you're an actor on this stage. What script is it that you're reading from? We celebrated Serena Williams when she got herself a rich white man. We celebrated that. But we're crucifying a poor black man in his death for once saying that he didn't want to date a black woman. Keep the same energy, sis. If you can't look at Stephon Clark's mother in her face and say, your son deserved to die. Look her dead in her eyes and say, your son deserved to die. Look at Triple X's mom. I've heard stuff about this too, right? Look at his mom in her eyes and say, your son deserved to die. Because I believe, even though I don't know him, I don't know her, I just read it somewhere, that he once abused a woman. And if she said it, I believe it. So therefore, your black son deserved to die. But then what I'm going to do simultaneously is I'm going to say that he deserved to die. But then I'm going to go to a Black Lives Matter rally, and then I'm going to be upset if police shoot him. You see the tension there? We can't have it both ways, sisters. You got to pick a side. So either you're going to protect your family, or you're going to oppress your family. But you got to pick a side, because the time for choosing has come. We can't stay in this place because too many of us are losing our lives, right? Too many of our people, too many of our men are losing their lives because we won't pick a side. We won't choose what side we want to be on. And we can't judge them harshly because we've been on the same track. We've done the same things that they do. You're not perfect either. And this is why I think as a community, as a family, we got to have the uncomfortable conversations. Because when we get to a point in black women, we know how we are. And I know because I've been that too. But when we get to a point where you can't tell us nothing, that's a scary proposition. So you got to be open and receptive to actually receiving criticism. But what that means is acknowledging that you're not flawless. I know Beyonce says you're flawless, but I guarantee you're flawed. We all are. That's just how this human thing works. But anyway, I know I got deep for a second, but I'm really passionate about this stuff because I see the impacts in our communities. And I want so desperately for us to have, we talk about like, in the 20s after slavery, and how a lot of our people had farms, and they had children to farm the land, and they were able to pass down generational wealth. That was the last time that we were able, as a collective, to pass down generational wealth. And my thing is, how can we pass down generational wealth when all we're doing right now is passing down generational pain? You can't pass down pain and wealth, right? Not in that regard. Because until we heal our pain, we will be broke and broken. Our will stop. Our wheel will stop. Our will to pass down things, it will stop. This is why we got to get back on the right track. But we got to get our collective minds back together. Get your mind right, mama. Get your mind right. I love quoting rap lyrics. So get your mind right. But I say the same thing to my brothers. But I've never walked the mile in a black man's shoes. And so this is why, if you think that I'm all overly hard on black women, it's because I've been a black woman my whole life. I've never been a black man. I've never lived the experience of a black man. I don't have the authority to tell a black man how to be a black man because I've never been a black man. But I can certainly see in my sisters who we've been, because I've been that too. So I trust that there are conversations that our brothers are having to have their own come to Jesus meeting. But this is ours. This is our conversation and our opportunity to talk about some hard things and some hard truths, and to really look in the mirror. But just remember that an actor auditions for the role. They're cast in the role because of their ability to bring the character to life through photo and through film, through their embodiment, right, of the character. But they themselves are not the character, right? So think about it. I always think about the movie The Color Purple, because for a long time I hated Danny Glover because he played such a convincing role on The Color Purple that I felt like Danny Glover was that abusive man. You know what I'm saying? So this is what I'm saying. Like a great actor has the ability to suck you in because they've embodied the character so well. And all I'm saying is that most of us, if not all of us, are portraying a character. And the purpose of the character is to invoke a reaction. But if you, like I said at the beginning, if you take away the attention, there's no reaction. So you can't be sucked into the film, right? You can't be sucked into the film if you don't have a reaction to the film, right? If you just sit back and look at things from an objective standpoint, right? The cat can be dead, but the cat can also be alive. I don't know, because I haven't viewed it. I haven't observed. You know what I mean? I haven't actively participated in the observation of the thing. So the cat could be either. Most of the films that we view, actually all of the films that we view are they've already been recorded. Actors will have pre-screenings of their movies. They'll sit in the audience to see the audience observation, to see their audience's reaction, to see if they've actually been able to captivate. Words, right? To captivate, to take captive the audience. These things matter, y'all. And so all I'm saying is, who are you trying to captivate? And if we get into the mantra of remembering that in every story, think about, like, as women, we love rom-coms, right? Romantic comedies. And it's usually like typical. The nice guy, the nice girl, they're both usually very naive. There's the hero, there's the villain, and there's the sage, right? So the hero, funny enough, is, and you should study the etymology of the word hero. You'd be surprised. Maybe not. But the hero is usually the person that's experienced the most conflict. Think about it. They're the person that is dark inside and kind of tormented, by their own stuff. You know what I mean? Because they've experienced conflict, internal conflict, and they've overcome. And they usually embody both sides because they understand the conflict, because they realize that they are the conflict. You get what I'm saying? The conflict is within them. It's them. And so they're able to embody the hero. because they've been able to embody the conflict. And so what I'm saying is, it's usually not, the comfort zone is not usually where the hero is, right? The hero is usually somewhere standing on top of buildings and, chasing danger and all this kind of stuff. And I'm not saying for you guys to do that, but I'm just saying to understand the premise of what I'm saying, the symbolism of all of these things. So if you go back and look at any, even superhero movies, look at like all the people in the different types of, the different archetypes, if you will, in the superhero movies. It's usually the same type of scenario. Um, the villain. Now, the villain may have moments of empathy, but usually in the end, they're self-serving. Because I was just watching. I love superhero movies. So I was just watching Avengers, Infinity Wars, and I kept thinking about Thanos. Right. So Thanos is like this big, larger-than-life character, but he seems very cold, but he's also conflicted, but he's also self-serving. You know what I mean? But he's still about preserving life, but he was willing to do what he thought was necessary to preserve life. You know what I mean? It's just, I think that a lot of us operate because we identify with these characters in movies, and we got to really sometimes sit with this and understand, examine who we are at our core. Because I guarantee you, you as a mother, a wife, a partner, a sister, a friend, a coworker, an employer, an employee, all of these things are parts of the whole, right? It's not who you are in its entirety. Because hopefully you wouldn't treat your husband the same way you would treat your child, right? Because you're not his parent, you're his wife. You're not his parent, you're his partner, right? So it's a different role that you have to play. You cannot play the same role because it depends on your audience, right? Who's your audience? And so I would say one of the things that I found to be most helpful is to figure out who I want to be in whatever story. Anytime I wake up in the morning, I'm like, yo, who do I want to be today? This is who I'm going to be today. And that's the role that I'm going to play. And so, but we got to figure out who we actually are. And then the last person that I want to talk about is the sage. And the sage, if any of you guys are into like, actually using sage to clean the energy in the air and things like that, the sage is usually the wise person, the person that comes down and, or that comes and has all this wisdom and knowledge and all this stuff that they impart on the people in order to help the people keep from destroying themselves, right? That's the sage. But what role are you playing in your life? And how are your different characters affecting other people? Because I guarantee you they're affecting other people. And so this is why I challenge you guys, and I challenge myself, to always choose the character with intention. And I'm not saying to always choose the nice girl, because I don't think that's true either. I don't think that you always need to be the nice girl. Sometimes you need to be a bitch. You need to fully embody that sometimes, but it can't be all that you are, though, right? Hear me. It can't be all that you are, sis. But what I'm saying is sometimes you have to be that to the audience that requires that. But always remember your audience. And so accept the reality that you are more than the labels that you give yourselves. This is why when I talk on the show about not having to carry all the bags that you've been given. Because as Black women, we have had a Herculean task, if you will. This is why I can understand very much how some of my sisters may feel in terms of, why should I have to continue to support Black men? Why should I have to continue to do that? They don't have education, they don't have jobs, they don't want us. Because think about all the narratives we've been sold. How many articles have you seen where some non-Black scholar comes out with an article that says, I remember this article, that Black women are the most unattractive women on earth. I can't actually say that with a straight face, y'all. Because I'm just like, what narrative are you trying to sell? Who are you trying to convince here? Because we know that's not true. We know that, because here's the, if that were true, think about it. If that were actually true, why would there be a market for hips like yours, and ass like yours, and lips like yours, right? Braids, right? Why would they criminalize you wearing your natural hair? If that were in fact true. So that tells me that, that's a narrative you're trying to sell me and I'm not buying it. Same narrative when it comes to, you know, black men ain't nothing, they're all deadbeats. I've told you guys repeatedly on this show, in my practice, I come across a lot of, I do family law, as you guys know. And, I come across all of these men who are fighting to be involved in the lives of their children. But what I see on the other side is women, like I read the correspondence. I read their correspondence. So I see exactly what's happening. You got a man that's begging to spend time with his kid, that's paying child support and doing whatever else, jumping through all of the legal hoops that she's making him jump through because she wants to test his ability, to test his resolve, if you will. But at the end of the day, the person that's being hurt is the child. And this is what I mean. It's like we do things that are so self-serving and we don't realize that it's self-serving. Because I've said it before and I'll say it again. The only people that win in family law cases are the lawyers. We're the only ones that are winning because remember, you're paying us to fight your family. You get what I'm saying? That's what you're paying us to do. To break up your family. And I'm not saying that in all cases, obviously people, get divorced and things happen, and I understand that, and I'm going to continue to do my job, you know what I mean? Because I understand that my role is necessary because people need legal advice and counseling and things like that when they go through hard times. So I accept that. But what I'm saying to you guys is from the inside of this thing looking out. It's a trap. It's a trap. It's good trap, but it's a trap. Because I'm like, our people aren't winning in this game. You're not winning. And so I challenge you to find more productive ways to have conversations with your partners. If you're thinking about getting a divorce, be willing to have the uncomfortable conversations before you involve a third party. Always do that first because it's important. Because if you're talking about preserving the structure of your family, and not even just the structure of your family, but your child, if you have children involved. But if you're not, for your own mental stability and your own mental health, it's important. Because one thing we know for sure, and I talked about this last week, is we suffer from post-traumatic slave disorder. And all I'm saying is, in order to be free, we got to understand that we're slaves. That's all I'm saying. You got to understand that if it wasn't designed for you, how is it that you think you're benefiting in it? That's all I'm saying. But we also can't be afraid to walk this journey and teeter in this place of balance. And what I mean is this. You guys remember the movie, I think it's a Dark Knight Rises with the last Heath Ledger movie, Batman Rises, or Dark Knight. It was a Batman movie. I think it was called Dark Knight Rises or something like that, with Heath Ledger. And if you guys remember, like after his death, Jack Nicholson and all these other actors and stuff like that, they were coming out and they were saying they were concerned about him when he was when he was rehearsing for the role, that he overly identified with the character, right? He overly identified with the character, and they believed that it drove him to this very, very, very dark place that he wasn't able to come from. And so what I'm saying is, in these roles that we play, folks, we got to really tread lightly on becoming too attached to one particular role, because whatever role you're attached to, that's the outcome that you're going to get. Unless you can project yourself and see yourself in other stories. And I know this sounds hokey, but if you're following me, think about it like a movie. Think about it like a movie. Because if Heath Ledger was able, as an actor, who knew he was an actor, knew he was portraying this character, got so sucked into the character that it took him as a person, a real person, to a dark place that, and I don't know, obviously, if this, causes suicide. I have no idea, right? But it's a theory. And so all I'm saying, folks, is that when we overly identify with these roles, it can take us to a place that we don't want to go. And so when you overly identify being a victim, you will forever be a slave. That's all I'm saying. If as long as you identify with being the victim, you will always be the victim. And so you got to change the way how you see yourself. And I spoke to one of my good friends. And I told her I was going to give her credit for this. So shout out to attorney Carmise Graves. Something she said this morning just kind of made me want to wrap this whole thing up. She said, the journey to love is through yourself. And sometimes we don't understand that. So I'm going to repeat that. The journey to love is through yourself. You are everything that you've always been looking for. Everything that you've ever thought you wanted, you already are. But you got to find a way to embody that. You got to find a way to dig into those characters by separating from some of the other characters, other characters you may have portrayed, through the last whatever your lifeline or timeline has been. But once you realize that you are, in fact, we always say it, we're everything. And we are. We are, in fact, everything. But that also means that in order to be everything, sometimes you have to realize that some parts of you are nothing. You know what I'm saying? And if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. So I asked my sisters, as we've looked outside of ourselves for love and for closure, that's a big thing with us, is that when we don't get closure, and oftentimes we don't, for things that have caused us pain and left us broken, we now take our brokenness and cast it off on other people, right? So just like an actor is cast in a character, we take that broken part and we cast it on other people, and we make them, you know what I'm saying? We make them our audience. We make whoever we're projecting our pain on, we make them the target audience. And so what I'm saying, folks, is this is about healing pain, healing self, loving self. Because if you cannot find a way to look at your own reflection and love everything about you, flaws and all, realize that you're not flawless and be okay with that. You're not Beyonce. She's not flawless, right? Realize that you're not flawless, and that is absolutely okay. And I don't mean okay in the sense of making excuse for bad behavior, because that's a negatory ghostwriter. What I mean is accepting the fact that you will fall short, but not allowing that fact to make you stop wanting better. Because as long as you continue to strive for better, you can be better. And so this is why I implore us to not look at Stephon Clark in one moment of his timeline saying whatever, ignorance he said. He spoke in ignorance because he didn't know. And he didn't know because I keep saying, folks, you're asking, on one hand, you're saying black men are broken. Just the same way we're broken, right? Remember, we went through the slave thing together. So they're no less broken than we are. And so, but it just manifests differently. And so what I'm saying, sisters, is we can't say on one hand, oh, they don't make enough money for me. He ain't got this. He don't look like this. He ain't 6 feet tall. And then say, oh, they're so messed up. And then on the other hand, not understand why they can't fully love you, right? Because if they don't fully love themselves, you're asking for too much. Because you're asking someone who is not whole within themselves to make you whole. And all I'm saying is that's your own responsibility. So we can't put these pressures on other people, whether it be friends, men, children. You can't put your own healing on someone else. Because sisters, what we've seen repeatedly is you're not going to get closure. Because the key to closure is you. Only you can close that chapter in your life and decide who you're going to be. Because you can either transmute the pain and use that pain to give you energy to go forward, or you can stay in that place and stay in that same timeline of brokenness and victimization and blame all external sources outside of you and never look at the power that you have. Because like I've said before on the show, I'm not saying that you haven't been victimized. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is accept the fact that that's not all that you are. Because more so than being a victim, you are a survivor. Because as I tell any black folk whose families got here through antebellum slavery, you're here because your ancestors survived, right? So that means you have survivor in your blood. So you are more than a victim. You're more than a slave. You are a survivor, right? Because you're still here. You're still here and you're still fighting this hard thing called life every single day. You're still acting on the stage. All I'm saying is choose the character that you want to be, but do so with intention. But how you do that with intention is you think about the different outcomes, right? Think about Schrodinger's cat. If the cat is dead, then this. If the cat is alive, then this. These are the options. So I need to think about what either one of them means and, make a decision about what I'm going to do. Either I'm going to leave the lid closed and not find out, or I'm going to open up Pandora's box, if you will, and find out all of the different possibilities that could exist. So what I'm saying is there are multiple possibilities that exist in our lives, that we don't have to be where we are right now. Our men don't have to be where they are right now, but be gentle with yourself. And like I always say, you don't have to carry all the bags that you've been given. And because you don't have to carry all the bags that you've been given, you also don't have to then pass those, the burden of the heaviness of those bags along to your men. Because they're trying to. They're fighting to. They're fighting the same fights, but even more so because they're actually under attack. Physically under attack. Now I think spiritually women are under attack, but I think men are physically under attack. But we're still under attack. That's what I'm saying. You're both under assault. It's just the matter of degrees. That's all this is. It's just degrees between this love thing, right? So in order to unbreak our hearts, right, to return to the double five or the double five, wholeness and completion, we have to realize that the key to our own things is us. Everything that you see, everything that you want, it's possible, but you got to believe it, right? You got to believe that it's possible. So I know that I've talked a lot today. This has been on my mind a lot. So I'm grateful that you guys allowed me the opportunity to share this with you. I hope that something that is something comes through that resonates with you, because my intention as I do this show is to help my people find themselves, to help my sisters find themselves, to help our men to find themselves. Because this is what I can say to you. Talking to a black man who is under physical assault constantly, and then under psychological and spiritual assault, even at the hands of us, their own women, I can guarantee you they're not thinking about intersectionality. I don't even understand how they can comprehend something like intersectionality. Because you got to remember, folks, you're asking men who've been broken and who remain under assault to now consider, your brokenness. Heal your own brokenness. I'm not saying that he can't help. I'm saying heal your own stuff. Let him work on his own stuff. Be a helpmate, right? Help him, let him help you, but ultimately the responsibility is individual. It's individual. Unless you, obviously we're talking about children, then you got to be careful about how you nurture the thing. Because you don't want them to be so dependent on you that they can't stand on their own 2 feet, right? You don't want them to suckle on the teat for so long that now they've become so dependent that they don't realize they can now live on solid food. So what I'm saying, you can't turn your husband or your partner into your child. Women can't do that either. But you got to understand that he needs healing, you need healing. The time for intersectionality and talking about all these very difficult concepts is not right now. Not saying that there's not a time. I'm just saying you're going to be hard pressed to get the result that you want because you're talking to people that are broken. You cannot bring wholeness to broken people. Broken people have to become whole before they can understand that, even that concept. And so don't put more burdens on our people than we already have, because ultimately the healing is ours. And so, as we are all actors on this stage, I ask and I implore my family to choose your characters wisely, and to not be afraid to teeter the balance between the character and the actor, because you don't want to go too far into either, because the results can be deleterious. So learn to kind of teeter the lines between the two. But anyway, I thank you guys so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Sis We Need to Talk. I know that I always bring you guys some heavy, heavy, heavy stuff, but in my mind, the times call for it. And so I hope that something resonates with you guys. And tune in next week. Remember, Dr. Fred Sawyer will be here to talk to us about his book, Black Renegade in White America. Until next week, wholeness.